What's up YouTube, and welcome to the Anabolic Outpost. Today I'm going to bring you a super quick recipe tutorial that is going to give you a high protein, voluminous snack that meets the standards of being anabolic, having a fair, decent amount of micronutrients in there as well, and is also a great substitute for ice cream or really any dessert when you're trying to get your sweet tooth in, but also trying to stay on track with your diet as well. These are super easy to make, and obviously they can be made in bulk as well because you just store them in the freezer, ready there for whenever you are in need of some protein food. Let me just quickly show you the very short list of ingredients that you will need to make this recipe. The first and the most obvious ingredient is going to be the blueberries, but if you want to use a different fruit, be my guest, I would love to see some other fruits being used in this recipe. Next ingredient is going to be the protein powder. As always, I'm using PE Science Protein, using the vanilla protein powder. But really any flavor would be good and would give you a unique flavor, whatever you want to go for. Next is that fat-free Greek yogurt covering. Your sweetener of choice, I'm going to be using sucralose. And finally, salt. The first ingredient I'm going to go ahead and add in is going to be the protein powder, and I'm going to go ahead and throw in 40 grams. Like I was saying before, if you did have a different protein powder that you wanted to use, I would say just go for it. It's probably going to be good however you make this. And I have done the PE Science Cake Pop flavor as well, and it was really delicious. So I'm sure anything that you create is going to be good as well. I'm now just going to go ahead and sprinkle in a pinch of salt. And lastly, I'm just going to throw in 1 gram of the sucralose sweetener. And if you're using a different sweetener, just do the conversion of how much you're going to add. I promise you, my sweetener conversion chart is on its way and it will be out shortly on my Instagram, and I'll be making a short little video on it too, so be on the lookout for that. I'm now going to go ahead and shovel up some of that fat-free Greek yogurt, which is going to be the primary base for the topping, and I'm going to go ahead and add 340 grams. And as always, all the ingredients that I'm mentioning are subjective to how much you want to make, and there's a lot of other variables, so just convert it over if you have to, if you're making more or less than I am making myself. I now have all the ingredients together for the blueberry topping, and I'm just going to go ahead and get in with a rubber spatula and mix it all together until all of the powders are dissolved inside of the yogurt. And don't worry when you first start to mix this, if you think there's way too much powder or it's going to be too thick. It is supposed to be pretty thick because when these freeze, you won't really taste the sweetening as much. Those should be very similar to frosting in both texture and taste. I now have my Greek yogurt covering all mixed together, and you can see the texture that you're really going for on this recipe with the blueberries. It is pretty thick, but I'm going to now go ahead and take a toothpick and stick it in a singular blueberry, and then you could go ahead and dip it inside of the Greek yogurt blueberry covering. You don't really have to be super perfect to get it covered all over the edges. I usually just dip it in there and just get a glob on it, and by the end of it, half of it is covered and half of it isn't anyway, unless you're really going for aesthetics yourself. And for the amount of covering that I have myself, you're going to need about 8 to 10 ounces of blueberries in order to use it all up. Now obviously you're not measuring out every single blueberry to have the same amount of Greek yogurt covering on it, so this variable is going to depend on how much Greek yogurt you put on there, and that's completely up to you for what kind of flavor you're going for and what ratio you want yourself. And I promise it isn't as hard as it looks on screen right now. I'm struggling with the camera here. It really only took me about 5 minutes to have this whole tray filled, as you can see right here. And once you have completed this step of the process, you would go ahead and insert this tray into the freezer. And I would say give it at the very least 20 minutes before you could take out the tray and transfer them into a more efficient container. Probably about an hour or two before you could consume these the way that they're meant to be consumed. So like I was just saying, it's been about 30 minutes now and the yogurt covering has frozen on the outside. Although the blueberries still haven't completely frozen on the inside, it's easy to just peel them off the parchment paper and transfer them into a bowl before you put them back into the freezer again. And they are kind of tasty like this in their half frozen form, so if you're impatient, you could go ahead and try these right now to see exactly what you're working with on this delicious snack. And this yogurt covered blueberry snack is now complete. A very short video on my channel, but it is a snack that I thought was worth making a video for, as I do make this fairly often and I wanted to put people onto this delicious way to enjoy fruit. And let me also take the time to take a look at the macros for this recipe. This is going to be the macros for the entire recipe as I made it here. It's going to have 75 grams of protein with 64 grams of carbs, only 4 grams of fat for a total of 400 calories. Before you even evaluate those macros, just take a look at that bowl that I have right here and look at how much volume is in there right now of calories, with also an insane amount of protein and insane looking macros overall. Not to mention that these could be made in bulk with a very long shelf life when stored in the freezer. I think this makes for an exceptional snack option. That's pretty much all there is to this recipe tutorial today. If you did have any questions or were confused on anything throughout the process of me showing you this recipe, be sure to comment down below and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Other than that, if you found this recipe both helpful and delicious, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.